Elizabeth Bennet smoothed her navy blue skirt as she took her seat in the back row of Congress Hall. The room buzzed with low conversations and the soft hum of translation devices. As a junior congressional aide, she was lucky to have a seat at all for President Ryan Matthews's address. Most of her colleagues were watching from overflow rooms elsewhere in the building. She glanced at her watch. 2 minutes until the president's scheduled appearance. Elizabeth took out her tablet and pulled up her notes. Her job was to record any policy points that might affect her boss, Congressman Ward, and his district in Ohio. These speeches were usually dull affairs, full of careful diplomatic language that said little of substance. The Grand Hall had changed, much in the 50 years since first contact. The upper balconies now featured special atmospheric chambers for coalition species who couldn't breathe Earth air. The front rows, once reserved for senior human officials, were now occupied by the 7 alien representatives. Their varied forms, from the tall, willowy Zalari to the squat, 6-limbed Durrani, still fascinated Elizabeth even after 2 years working in Congress. A chime sounded, and the room fell silent. President Matthews entered from the side door, flanked by his security team. Elizabeth noticed Sam Holloway, the chief security officer, scanning the room with practiced eyes. For a moment his gaze seemed to rest on her, but then moved on. The president looked tired. At 62, Matthews had aged visibly during his 3 years in office. Leading Earth through its integration into the Galactic Coalition was a thankless job. Half of humanity resented him for not pushing back against coalition demands, while the other half feared he might do just that and provoke our protectors. Distinguished representatives, honored members of Congress, citizens of Earth, Matthews began, his voice carrying through the hall's perfect acoustics. Today marks the 50th anniversary of humanity's entrance into the galactic community. Elizabeth began taking notes as the president recited the usual platitudes. Gratitude for coalition guidance, appreciation for their advanced medicine and technology, hope for continued partnership. But 12 minutes into the speech, something changed. The president paused, took a sip of water, and set aside his tablet. Elizabeth's fingers stopped moving across her screen as she noticed the shift. This wasn't in the prepared remarks that had been circulated to staff this morning. Before I continue with the formal address, Matthews said, his voice dropping to a more personal tone, I'd like to speak plainly about our place in this coalition. The alien representatives stirred in their seats. The Zalari ambassador's translator hummed as she whispered something to her aide. 50 years ago, humanity had just taken its first steps to Mars. We had mapped our genome, split the atom, and begun to harness the power of artificial intelligence. We were on a path, our own path, to the stars. Elizabeth leaned forward. No president had spoken like this in public for decades. The coalition arrived with gifts and warnings. They showed us wonders and taught us about threats lurking in the darkness between stars. They offered protection, and we accepted gratefully. Matthew's voice grew stronger. But in our gratitude, we surrendered something precious, our independence, our self-determination, our human drive to forge our own destiny. The Durrani representative stood abruptly, their translation device emitting sharp clicks that didn't convert to any human language. One of their aides pulled them back to their seat. Today, our children learned that humanity was primitive before the coalition, that we were saved from our own destructive tendencies, that we should be thankful for our place as junior partners in galactic affairs. Elizabeth felt a lump forming in her throat. She'd had these thoughts, but no one in power ever voiced them. But I have studied our history, our true history. Humanity climbed out of caves and reached for the moon in less time than many coalition species took to discover fire. Our creativity, our adaptability, our determination are not flaws to be managed. They are gifts to be celebrated. Tears welled in Elizabeth's eyes. Around her, other humans in the hall sat straighter in their seats. Some nodded. Others looked afraid. I do not suggest we abandon the coalition. I do not propose isolation or conflict, but I do assert that humanity deserves an equal voice in decisions that affect our future. We have accepted guidance for 50 years. Now it is time we stood as partners, not wards. The Zalari ambassador rose gracefully, her slender form towering over her colleagues. "President Matthews," she said, her translator converting her whistling speech to smooth English, "this deviation from protocol is concerning. Perhaps you are unwell." Matthews smiled. "I am more well today than I have been in years, Ambassador Chirac, clear of mind and purpose." This speech was not approved by the Advisory Council, the Zillari continued. "With respect, Ambassador, Earth's leaders do not require approval to address our own people." A murmur ran through the human section of the audience. Elizabeth wiped her eyes, not caring if anyone saw her tears. In 2 years working in Congress, she'd never witnessed such a direct challenge to coalition authority. "I will conclude by saying this," Matthews continued, ignoring the growing commotion among the alien representatives. 50 years ago, we were told that humanity was not ready for the stars. I believe we are ready now. Ready to stand as equals. Ready to contribute our unique perspective to galactic civilization. Ready to be more than junior partners who nod and agree. Sam Holloway moved closer to the president as the alien representatives conferred urgently with each other. Elizabeth noticed other security personnel taking positions near the exits. "The road ahead may be difficult," Matthews said, his voice steady despite the tension filling the room. "There may be those who prefer humanity compliant and grateful, but I believe in our potential, not just to join galactic civilization, but to help lead it toward a better future for all species." He looked up, seeming to address not just those in the hall but all of humanity. "We have slept for 50 years. It is time to wake up." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt much longer. Then the human section of the audience erupted in applause, not polite diplomatic applause, but thunderous emotional approval. Elizabeth found herself on her feet, clapping until her hands hurt, tears streaming freely down her face. The coalition representatives remained seated, their body language, even across species, clearly conveying disapproval. The Durrani delegation departed abruptly, their heavy footfalls echoing through the hall. As Matthews was escorted from the podium by his security team, his eyes scanned the crowd. For a brief moment, his gaze met Elizabeth's. He gave a slight nod as if acknowledging her emotional response. When the president had left, the hall erupted in conversation. Elizabeth's tablet pinged with urgent messages from Congressman Ward, demanding her immediate return to the office. As she gathered her things, she noticed Sam Holloway standing at the side exit, watching her. He approached, his face unreadable. "Miss Bennett, isn't it? Congressman Ward's research aide?" "Yes," she replied, surprised he knew her name. "The president would appreciate your analysis of historical precedents for today's speech. Something about your work on pre-contact human innovation caught his attention." Elizabeth blinked in confusion. "My work? I don't understand." Sam handed her a small card with only a time and address printed on it. "Your country needs you, Miss Bennett, tomorrow morning." As he walked away, Elizabeth stared at the card in her hand. The president knew about her research, her private database of human achievements before the coalition. Outside, crowds had already gathered. News of the speech spread rapidly, and people were reacting with both excitement and fear. Elizabeth knew the coalition would not let this challenge go unanswered. Things would change now, for the president, for humanity, and somehow it seemed for her. As she made her way back to her office, Elizabeth realized that the tears the president's speech had brought to her eyes marked more than an emotional moment. They marked the end of one chapter in her life and the beginning of another. Whatever came next, nothing would be the same. Elizabeth stared through the car window at the rolling Virginia countryside. 3 weeks had passed since President Matthews' speech, and the world had changed rapidly. Protests filled streets in major cities across the globe. Some supported the president's call for human dignity, while others feared coalition retaliation. News feeds showed heated debates and worried faces. Congressman Ward had fired her 2 days after the speech. He claimed budget cuts, but Elizabeth knew better. Her research into pre-contact human achievements had somehow reached the president, and Ward wanted nothing to do with someone drawing coalition attention. Now she sat in the back of a government, car with darkened windows, heading to the mysterious address Sam Holloway had given her. She had delayed this meeting, unsure if she should get involved. But after losing her job and watching coalition representatives on television demanding the president clarify his unfortunate remarks, she had finally called the number on the card. The car turned onto a narrow road marked only with a number. No sign indicated what lay ahead. They passed through a checkpoint where armed guards examined her ID and scanned her with handheld devices. "Sorry for the security measures," the driver said, his first words of the 2-hour journey. "Things have been tense since the speech." The car stopped before an ordinary-looking office building. Only the security features, cameras, motion sensors, and another checkpoint suggested this was more than a rural business center. Sam Holloway waited at the entrance. He looked more tired than when she'd last seen him, with new lines around his eyes. "Thank you for coming, Miss Bennett," he said, extending his hand. "We were beginning to think you wouldn't accept our invitation." "I wasn't sure I should," Elizabeth replied honestly. "I still don't understand why I'm here." Sam nodded. "That's fair. Please follow me." They entered the building and took an elevator. Down, not up. Elizabeth watched as Sam pressed his palm against a scanner, then entered a code. The elevator descended for longer than seemed possible for a building that had appeared to have only 3 floors above ground. "Most of the facility is underground," Sam explained, noticing her confusion. "Built during the Cold War, expanded after first contact." The doors opened to reveal a large, busy operations center. Dozens of people worked at computer stations, monitored large screens showing news feeds, and conferred in small groups. The room reminded Elizabeth of mission control centers she'd seen in films about NASA's golden age. "Welcome to Heritage," Sam said quietly. The president's speech wasn't a spontaneous act of rebellion, Elizabeth. It was the opening move in a plan years in the making. Elizabeth followed Sam through the busy room. People glanced at her with curious expressions. She felt out of place in her simple blouse and skirt among these serious-looking operatives. Sam led her to a conference room where 3 people waited. He introduced them as the core team: Dr. Carol Martinez, a woman in her 50s with short, silver hair and a lab coat; Alan Freeman, a tall black man who wore the formal blue uniform of a coalition liaison; and Jack Powell, a muscular man in his 40s with military bearing. "Please sit," Sam said, closing the door. "What I'm about to tell you is known to fewer than 100 people on Earth." Elizabeth sat, her heart beating faster. "Why me? I was just a congressional aide." Carol Martinez smiled kindly. "Your research into pre-contact human innovation rates caught our attention 2 years ago. You identified patterns nobody else noticed. Acceleration curves in human development that contradicted coalition claims about our natural pace of advancement." "That was just a personal project," Elizabeth said. "How did you even know about it?" "We've been watching for people like you," Jack Powell said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "People who question the official narrative without making noise about it." Sam opened a folder and slid a document across the table. 15 years ago, a coalition maintenance technician made a mistake during a routine update to atmospheric processors in North America. For 36 hours, the processors stopped releasing certain compounds. During that time, scientists at 3 different universities suddenly made breakthrough discoveries. When the processors came back online, those same scientists lost interest in their work. Elizabeth stared at the report, struggling to understand. "Are you saying the coalition is drugging us?" "Not exactly drugging," Dr. Martinez explained. "More like subtle chemical suppression. The compounds affect human brain chemistry, damping curiosity, reducing ambition, increasing complacency. Small effects, but applied to billions of people. Over 50 years. That's why humanity has been so passive," Elizabeth whispered. "Why we accepted our role so easily." Alan Freeman nodded. "The coalition doesn't see it as harmful. They believe they're helping us develop at an appropriate pace. Many coalition species underwent similar guidance from more advanced civilizations. But we're not like other species," Elizabeth said, feelings of anger rising. You've seen my research. Humans innovate differently. We make intuitive leaps. Jack smiled for the first time. That's exactly why you're here. President Matthews' speech was designed to wake people up, emotionally counteract the chemical suppression. Your tears that day weren't just emotion. They were recognition. Some part of you was waking up. The coalition representatives were already suspicious of the president, Sam added. His speech confirmed their fears. They've placed him under house arrest, calling it medical observation after concerning behavior. They can't just detain our president, Elizabeth protested. They can and did, Alan said grimly. I was there as his coalition liaison when they arrived. That's when I finally chose sides in this quiet war. Dr. Martinez placed a tablet in front of Elizabeth. We've detected that about 15% of humans have natural resistance to the suppression compounds. You're one of them. Your work proves it. We need people like you, Elizabeth. For what? She asked. Phase 2, Sam replied. The president started Phase 1 with his speech, creating public awareness and discourse. Phase 2 is revealing the truth about the atmospheric processors and the suppression program. And then what? We can't fight the coalition. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Jack exchanged glances with the others. That's what they want us to believe. But we've discovered something that changes everything. Dr. Martinez stood. Would you like to see it? Elizabeth hesitated only briefly before nodding. They led her through several security doors to a laboratory deep within the facility. In the center of the room, inside a transparent containment field, floated a crystalline sphere about the size of a basketball. Its surface swirled with colors and patterns that seemed to shift as she watched. We call it the artifact, Carol said quietly. It's not coalition technology. It's much, much older. And for some reason, it responds to human brainwaves in ways it doesn't respond to coalition species. Elizabeth stepped closer, drawn to the object. The colors inside the sphere moved faster as she approached. The coalition doesn't know we have this, Sam explained. It was discovered in Antarctica 20 years ago, buried in ice at least 50,000 years old. A coalition survey team found it, but the human scientists on the team hid it before the coalition could claim it. What does it do? Elizabeth asked, unable to look away from the swirling patterns. It stores information, Carol replied. Historical records, scientific knowledge, star maps, all from a civilization that the coalition texts only mention in passing as the predecessors. And according to the data we've managed to extract, humans share certain neural patterns with these predecessors, which explains why the coalition has been suppressing our development, Alan added. They're afraid of what we might become. As Elizabeth stared at the artifact, the colors suddenly formed into recognizable images. Earth seen from space, ancient human civilizations, modern cities, and then something else. Human ships traveling between stars. It's never done that before. Carol whispered, excitement in her voice. It's responding to you specifically, Elizabeth. The images faded, and Elizabeth stepped back, overwhelmed. What do you want from me? Sam placed a hand on her shoulder. We want you to join Heritage. Help us understand the artifact. Help us free humanity from coalition control. The president's speech brought you to tears because something in you recognized the truth, Jack said. Now you need to decide if you'll help us share that truth with everyone else. Elizabeth looked around at the four faces watching her expectantly. Her life had already changed forever. There was no going back to her simple job and quiet research. She took a deep breath and made her choice. Tell me what I need to do. Elizabeth sat cross-legged on the floor of the laboratory, facing the artifact. 2 weeks had passed since she joined Heritage. She spent most of her time here, learning to focus her thoughts toward the crystalline sphere. Each day she made a little more progress in understanding its strange method of communication. Try thinking about space travel again, Dr. Martinez suggested from her monitoring station. It responded strongly to that yesterday. Elizabeth nodded and closed her eyes. She pictured humans traveling among the stars in ships of their own design. The image was clear in her mind, sleek vessels unlike the bulky coalition transports she had seen in pictures. When she opened her eyes, the artifact glowed brightly. Inside its crystalline structure, images formed, technical diagrams, mathematical formulas, and star maps. "It's working," Carol whispered, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "The scanners are capturing everything." Elizabeth maintained her focus, keeping the image of human ships steady in her mind. The artifact responded by showing what looked like engine designs and navigation systems far more advanced than anything she had seen in Coalition technology. "This is incredible," Alan Freeman said from the doorway. He had just entered the lab, accompanied by Sam Holloway. Those drive systems would make Coalition ships look like rowboats. Sam stepped closer, watching the flowing images with intense concentration. "Can you ask it about the predecessors themselves? Who they were, what they looked like?" Elizabeth tried to form the question in her mind. "Who created you?" The artifact's glow changed from blue to golden, and new images appeared. Beings that looked remarkably human but with subtle differences. Taller, with slightly larger eyes and six-fingered hands. "They're so similar to us," Carol breathed. "The genetic connection must be stronger than we thought." The image changed again, showing these beings standing beside other species. Some resembling Coalition races, others completely unfamiliar. All seemed to be working together peacefully. "A different kind of coalition," Elizabeth murmured. "Equal partners, not rulers and subjects." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The images in the artifact dissolved as Elizabeth's concentration broke. "Security breach," Sam said, pressing his earpiece to listen better. "Coalition security forces have entered the outer perimeter. We need to move." Carol quickly shut down her equipment. "How did they find us?" "They must have tracked energy signatures from the artifact," Alan said, helping Elizabeth to her feet. "Its power output has increased tenfold since Elizabeth started working with it." Sam moved to a wall panel and pressed his palm against it. A hidden door slid open. "Evacuation route. We need to get the artifact to Sanctuary." "What's Sanctuary?" Elizabeth asked as Jack Powell rushed into the lab carrying several backpacks. "Our fallback location," Jack explained, handing out the packs. "Underground bunker in the Rockies. Much better shielded than this place." Carol and Alan carefully placed the artifact in a special container. Its glow dimmed, but didn't fade completely. "Elizabeth, stay close to me," Sam instructed. "You're the only one who can communicate effectively with the artifact. That makes you our most valuable asset now." The group moved swiftly through the hidden passage, which led to an underground garage. Other Heritage personnel were already loading equipment into vehicles. "What about the rest of the staff?" Elizabeth asked, seeing only about 20 people in the garage. "Essential personnel only," Jack replied grimly. "The others are creating diversions to slow down the Coalition forces. They all knew this day might come." Elizabeth felt a pang of guilt. Had her work with the artifact brought danger to these people? As if reading her thoughts, Carol touched her arm. "This was always the plan, dear. The president's speech, your recruitment, activating the artifact, it was all leading to this moment. We just hoped for more time." They boarded a large transport vehicle disguised as a commercial delivery truck. The artifact's container was secured in the center, surrounded by monitoring equipment. Elizabeth sat beside it, feeling a strange connection to the ancient device. As the truck pulled away, Sam showed them a video feed from outside the facility. Coalition security forces in their distinctive silver uniforms had surrounded the building. They used scanning devices Elizabeth had never seen before. "Those are consciousness pattern detectors," Alan explained. "They can identify specific brainwave patterns like yours, Elizabeth. The Coalition must know about your connection to the artifact." "How would they know that?" she asked. Jack and Sam exchanged glances. "We believe there's a leak somewhere in Heritage," Sam admitted. "Someone feeding information to the Coalition." The truck drove through a series of underground tunnels before emerging in what looked like an ordinary warehouse miles from the facility. From there, they transferred to a private aircraft waiting on a small airstrip. During the flight to the Rockies, Elizabeth stayed near the artifact's container. Though dimmed by its shielding, she could still feel its presence in her mind, like a soft whisper just below the threshold of hearing. I've been studying the data we gathered, Carol said, sitting beside her. The artifact isn't just a record keeper. I think it's a teaching tool, left specifically for species with compatible neural patterns. Left by the predecessors, Elizabeth mused. But why? And why does it respond to me more than others? We've analyzed your genetic profile, Carol explained. You have an unusual sequence on chromosome 7 that only appears in about 1% of humans. It creates subtle differences in your brain's electromagnetic field, differences that match patterns we've detected in the artifact itself. So I'm some kind of key to this ancient technology? More like a natural interface, Carol said. The two predecessors may have engineered this genetic marker into early humans, creating a bloodline that could access their knowledge when we were ready. The idea should have frightened Elizabeth, but instead, it felt right, as if she had always been, meant to find the artifact. The plane landed at a small hidden airstrip nestled in the Rocky Mountains. Vehicles were waiting to transport them the final distance to Sanctuary. As they drove through winding mountain roads, Sam received a transmission. His expression darkened as he listened. "The president?" Jack asked quietly. Sam nodded. "Coalition forces have moved him to their orbital station. They're calling it medical treatment, but it's effective imprisonment." "They're afraid," Alan said. Matthew's speech created more unrest than they expected. Humans everywhere are questioning Coalition authority for the first time in decades. And now they know about the artifact, Carol added. If humans gain access to predecessor technology, the power balance shifts completely. The vehicles entered what looked like an abandoned mining operation. Heavy doors hidden in the mountainside slid open, revealing a modern facility built within the natural rock. "Welcome to Sanctuary," Sam said as they drove inside. Built before first contact as a continuity of government site, expanded secretly ever since. The mountain provides natural shielding against Coalition scans. The artifact was moved to a new laboratory, deep within the complex. When removed from its container, its glow immediately brightened in Elizabeth's presence. "It knows you're here," Carol observed. "The connection is getting stronger." Elizabeth placed her hand near the sphere. She didn't touch it. No one had risked direct contact yet, but she could feel warmth radiating from it. "What do we do now?" she asked, looking at the faces of her new colleagues, people who had dedicated their lives to freeing humanity from invisible chains. "Now," Sam said, "we learn everything the artifact can teach us about predecessor technology. Then we use that knowledge to neutralize the Coalition's atmospheric processors and wake up humanity." "And if the Coalition tries to stop us?" Elizabeth asked. Jack smiled grimly. "That's why we chose this location. Sanctuary isn't just a laboratory, it's a fortress. And it contains weapon systems the Coalition doesn't know about." Elizabeth turned back to the artifact, which pulsed with golden light. "Tell me what you know," she whispered to it. "Show me how to free my people." As if in response, the crystalline sphere filled with new images, detailed schematics for a device that could blanket the entire planet with a signal that would neutralize the effects of the Coalition's atmospheric manipulation. "Think it just answered you," Carol said in amazement. Elizabeth nodded, a sense of purpose filling her. "Then let's get to work." 5 days passed inside Sanctuary as Elizabeth and the Heritage team worked tirelessly. The artifact continued to reveal information about the device that could counteract the Coalition's atmospheric manipulation. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to build a prototype based on the artifact's schematics. Elizabeth sat in the command center with Sam, watching a global map on the main screen. Red dots showed Coalition forces gathering around major cities. "They're preparing for something," Sam said, his voice tired from lack of sleep. "Their patrols have doubled near atmospheric processor stations." "They know we're planning to neutralize the processors," Elizabeth replied. Alan said Coalition leadership has called an emergency meeting on their orbital station. Jack Powell entered the room, followed by Carol Martinez. Both looked exhausted but determined. "The prototype is ready," Carol announced. "It works exactly as the artifact showed us. In tests, it completely neutralizes the suppression compounds." "But there's a problem," Jack added. Its range is limited, less than 5 miles. To affect the entire planet, we'd need to connect it to the global satellite network. Sam studied the map thoughtfully. Houston Control Center. It manages all Earth communication satellites. If we can upload our signal there, we could reach everyone at once. The coalition will have that place heavily guarded, Elizabeth pointed out. Not as heavily as you might think, Sam replied. They rely more on their atmospheric suppression than physical security. They don't expect resistance. Jack nodded. I can lead a team to Houston. Once inside, we'll need about 10 minutes to upload the signal pattern to the satellite network. And I need to go with you, Elizabeth said firmly. The artifact has shown me exactly how the upload needs to be configured. I'm the only one who fully understands it. Sam shook his head. Too risky. You're too valuable to Heritage. Without me, the mission fails, Elizabeth insisted. The artifact has been preparing me for this. It's why I can connect with it better than anyone else. Before Sam could argue further, alarms blared throughout Sanctuary. A security officer rushed into the command center. Coalition forces detected approaching from the north and east. At least 50 troops with scanning equipment. They found us. How? Carol asked, shocked. The mountain should shield us from their scans. They must have followed our supply convoy, Jack suggested. Or the leak in Heritage is worse than we thought. Sam made a quick decision. We need to split up. Jack, take Elizabeth and a small team to Houston. Carol and I will stay here with the artifact and hold off the coalition forces as long as possible. We can't leave you behind, Elizabeth protested. This was always a possibility, Sam said calmly. Heritage has planned for it. The important thing now is getting that signal uploaded. It's what the president started with his speech, and we need to finish it. Carol touched Elizabeth's arm. He's right. You're the key to everything now. We need you to succeed. Within 20 minutes, Elizabeth found herself in a small aircraft with Jack and 3 other Heritage operatives. They carried a compact version of the prototype device, specially designed for the mission. Through the window, she watched Sanctuary grow smaller as they flew away. Coalition ships were visible in the distance, closing in on the mountain base. Will they be okay? She asked Jack, who piloted the aircraft. Sanctuary has defenses they don't know about, he replied. But his expression remained grim. And Sam is the best strategist I know. They'll hold out as long as they can. The flight to Houston took 3 hours. They landed at a private airstrip, where a Heritage supporter met them with ground transportation and fake identification badges for the Houston Control Center. Security has been increased, their contact explained as they drove. Coalition advisors are stationed at all entrances, but your IDs should get you through. They're perfect replicas of Level 5 clearance. Elizabeth studied the satellite control center as they approached. It looked ordinary, a large government building surrounded by a fence and security checkpoints. Nothing that suggested it controlled humanity's access to global communications. Remember, Jack said as they prepared to enter, we need 10 minutes once we reach the main control room. Elizabeth will handle the upload while we secure the area. What if we're discovered? One of the team asked. Then we improvise. Jack replied. But failure isn't an option. Their fake IDs worked perfectly at the security checkpoint. The guards, their expressions slightly dull from years of atmospheric suppression, barely glanced at the badges before waving them through. Inside, the building was a maze of corridors and offices. Jack led them confidently, following directions from Heritage Intelligence. They encountered few people. It was Sunday, and the center operated with minimal staff. When they reached the door to the main control room, however, they found 2 coalition advisors standing guard. The tall, blue-skinned aliens watched them, approach with suspicious eyes. This area is restricted today, one said, its translator converting the words to flat, emotionless English. Jack stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert. We have Level 5 clearance for emergency maintenance. He held up his badge. The coalition advisor reached for a scanning device at its belt. Unscheduled maintenance requires verification from central authority. Elizabeth felt her heart race. In seconds, the scanner would reveal their fake IDs. Jack tensed beside her, ready to act. Before either side could move, alarms began blaring throughout the building. The coalition advisors turned toward the sound, momentarily distracted. Jack moved with lightning speed, delivering precise strikes that left both aliens unconscious before they could react. "Perfect timing," he said, dragging the bodies inside the control room. Sam must have triggered a false alarm in the system. The control room was empty except for 2 human technicians, who stared at them in shock. Jack quickly explained who they were and what they were doing. To Elizabeth's surprise, the technicians didn't resist. "We've felt different since the president's speech," one explained. "Like waking up from a long dream. If you're with him, we'll help you." Elizabeth set up the prototype device at the main console. The technicians showed her how to access the satellite network controls. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, inputting the complex code sequences the artifact had imprinted in her mind. "Coalition security forces are responding to the alarm," Jack reported, watching security feeds. "We have maybe 5 minutes before they realize it's a diversion." "I need 7 minutes minimum," Elizabeth replied, not looking up from her work. "The upload has to be precise, or it won't neutralize the compounds properly." Jack positioned his team at the doors. "Then we'll buy you those 2 extra minutes." Elizabeth focused entirely on her task, blocking out everything else. The code sequences were incredibly complex, a perfect counterbalance to the coalition's suppression technology. As she worked, she felt almost as if the artifact itself guided her fingers. "Coalition forces have entered the building," Jack warned. 2 minutes at most." "Almost there," Elizabeth replied. The upload progress bar showed 85% complete. The sounds of struggle reached her ears, shouting, the distinctive hum of coalition weapons. Jack and his team had engaged the security forces in the corridor outside. 90 seconds, Elizabeth." The progress bar reached 95%. Elizabeth entered the final activation sequence, her heart pounding in her ears. The system asked for confirmation to transmit. She hit enter. A soft hum filled the room as the upload completed. On the main screen, a map of Earth appeared with hundreds of tiny dots representing satellites. One by one, they changed from blue to green as the signal spread through the network. "It's done," she whispered. "The signal is transmitting." The door burst open. Coalition security forces flooded into the control room, weapons raised. Jack and 1 remaining team member backed in after them, hands raised in surrender. "Step away from the console," the coalition commander ordered. Elizabeth stood slowly, hands raised. "You're too late. The signal has already been sent." The alien's expression didn't change, but its posture shifted slightly. "What signal? What have you done?" Before Elizabeth could answer, the alien staggered suddenly, placing a hand against its head. Around the room, the other coalition forces showed similar signs of disorientation. The human security personnel who had accompanied them looked confused, blinking rapidly as if adjusting to bright light. "What's happening?" one of the human guards asked, his voice clearer and more alert than before. "Humanity is waking up," Elizabeth said softly. Across the planet, the signal spread through the satellite network, creating a field that neutralized the coalition's atmospheric suppression. For the first time in 50 years, humans everywhere began to think with full clarity. The fog that had dulled their minds, their ambition, their independence for generations was finally lifting, and deep in the Rocky Mountains, the artifact glowed with its brightest light yet, its mission finally fulfilled. 6 months after what people now called Awakening Day, Elizabeth stood before a mirror in her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon. She adjusted the simple blue uniform that identified her as Earth's representative to the Galactic Coalition. So much had changed in such a short time. After the signal spread worldwide, humans everywhere experienced a collective moment of clarity. Memories sharpened, ambitions rekindled. A shared realization spread across the planet. Humanity had been mentally suppressed for 50 years. The immediate aftermath had been chaotic. Protests erupted in every major city. Coalition representatives retreated to their orbital stations as humans demanded answers. Some called for the coalition to leave Earth completely. Others wanted revenge for decades of manipulation. But cooler heads had prevailed, largely due to President Matthews. Released from coalition custody during the confusion, he had addressed the world with the same calm dignity he'd shown in his congressional speech. "We have awakened," he had said, "but we must not let anger guide our next steps. The coalition has much to answer for, but they also brought knowledge and protection. We seek not separation or conflict, but equality, a true partnership of species." Elizabeth's door chimed, interrupting her thoughts. She opened it to find Sam Holloway waiting. "It's time," he said with a small smile. "The council is ready." Sam had survived the coalition attack on Sanctuary, though he still walked with a slight limp from his injuries. Carol Martinez had also survived, though many others had not. The attack had ended abruptly when the signal spread, leaving coalition forces confused and disorganized. "How do I look?" Elizabeth asked, suddenly nervous. "Like someone who changed history," Sam replied. "The artifact chose well." The artifact. After Awakening Day, it had been moved to a secure facility in Geneva, where scientists from around the world studied it. Elizabeth visited whenever she could, maintaining her unique connection with the ancient device. It continued to reveal information, scientific knowledge, historical records, and star maps of regions the coalition had never explored. They walked together through the Horizon's corridors to the shuttle bay. The ship orbited Proxima Centauri b, the neutral world where the full Galactic Council was meeting for the first time since humanity's awakening. Earth had demanded this meeting, and after months of negotiation, the coalition had agreed. "Any last advice?" Elizabeth asked as they boarded the shuttle. "Just be yourself," Sam said. "That's what got us here." The shuttle descended to the planet's surface, landing at a massive complex built specifically for interspecies diplomacy. The architecture accommodated beings of all sizes and environmental needs, while maintaining a sense of equality. No species style dominated. Inside the main chamber, representatives from 27 species sat in a circular arrangement. The 7 original coalition races occupied their traditional positions, but they no longer dominated the proceedings as they once had. Elizabeth took her place at the podium in the center. Beside her stood President Matthews, looking healthier and more vibrant than he had in years. On her other side, Dr. Carol Martinez monitored a small container that held a portable version of the artifact, which pulsed gently with golden light. "Representatives of the galactic community," Elizabeth began, her voice steady despite her nerves. 6 months ago, humanity woke from 50 years of suppression. We discovered that those who called themselves our guides had instead been our jailers, limiting our potential out of fear of what we might become. The Zilari ambassador shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. "We could have responded with anger or isolation," Elizabeth continued. "Instead, we chose to come here today to propose a new beginning, not just for humanity, but for all species in this galaxy." She activated a holographic display showing the star maps from the artifact. "This knowledge comes from those you know only as the predecessors. Their civilizations spanned this galaxy long before any of our species achieved space flight. They did not conquer or control, they connected and uplifted." Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives recognized star systems the coalition had never mapped. The predecessors believed that diversity of thought and approach was the galaxy's greatest strength, Elizabeth explained. "Each species brings unique perspectives and abilities. True advancement comes not from control, but from collaboration between equals." President Matthews stepped forward. "Earth proposes a restructuring of the Galactic Coalition into a true galactic community, a partnership of equals rather than a hierarchy of advanced and developing species." The Durrani representative rose from his seat. "Humans were not ready for full galactic citizenship. Our measures were protective, not oppressive. Yet in just 6 months since awakening, humanity has made technological leaps that your scientists claimed would take decades." Carol pointed out. Our innovations in medicine, energy, and transportation have already benefited multiple worlds. Because you use predecessor technology you don't fully understand, the Zellari ambassador countered. We understand more than you think, Elizabeth said calmly. She nodded to Carol, who activated the portable artifact. The golden sphere projected images throughout the chamber, detailed records of early interactions between coalition species and others they had guided. The pattern was always the same: discovery, assessment, and then subtle suppression of species deemed too creative or unpredictable. The predecessors foresaw this, Elizabeth explained as the images continued. They left their knowledge specifically for species with the neural patterns to access it, species like humans who think differently, who make intuitive leaps. They believed these species would help prevent stagnation. A hush fell over the chamber as the implications became clear. The coalition's careful management of developing species had not been for protection, but for control. We are not here to condemn, President Matthews said into the silence. We are here to chart a new course. Earth extends an open hand of partnership, true partnership, to all species. From the back of the chamber, a representative from one of the younger coalition species stood. The Nuvari were insectoid beings who had joined the coalition only 30 years ago. The humans speak truth, the Nuvari said, their translator converting the clicks and whistles to words. Our own development has been managed. We support Earth's proposal for equality. Another representative stood, then another. Soon, half the chamber had expressed support for restructuring the coalition along more equal lines. The Zellari ambassador, seeing the tide turning, rose gracefully. Perhaps there is wisdom in examining our traditions. We did not intend harm, but we may have been overcautious. As the formal vote began, Elizabeth stepped back from the podium. Sam squeezed her hand gently. You did it, he whispered. We all did, she replied. The president, heritage, everyone who kept questioning even when their minds were clouded. The vote concluded with overwhelming support for Earth's proposal. A new galactic charter would be drafted, establishing equal status for all member species. The chamber erupted in conversation. Elizabeth felt the artifact pulse warmly in its container. She placed her hand near it, feeling the now familiar connection. Thank you, she whispered to the ancient device and the long-vanished civilization that created it. That evening, Earth's delegation gathered on an observation deck overlooking Proxima Centauri B's spectacular ringed moon. The planet's twin suns were setting, casting everything in golden light. What happens now? Elizabeth asked, standing between Sam and Carol. Now the real work begins, President Matthews replied. Building true partnership after 50 years of inequality won't be easy. And the artifact? Carol asked. It still has so much more to share. We continue to learn, Elizabeth said. But we share what we learn openly with all species. No more secrets, no more managed development. Sam pointed to the sky where the first stars were becoming visible. The predecessors left their knowledge because they believed species like us could bring new ideas to the galaxy. Now we get to prove them right. Elizabeth nodded, feeling a sense of purpose and possibility unlike anything she had known before. 6 months ago, she had been moved to tears by a president's brave speech. Now she stood at the beginning of a new chapter for humanity and all other species. In the distance, a ship lifted off, its engines glowing against the darkening sky. On its side was the new emblem of Earth, a spiral galaxy with a small blue dot at its edge. Not at the center, but not at the periphery either. Just one point of light among many, each important, each with something unique to contribute. A new dawn had risen, not just for humanity, but for all who shared the stars.